Good day, and welcome to the investor conference call of Sanofi India Limited. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Ms. Radhika Shah, Company Secretary of Sanofi India Limited. Thank you, and over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to the investor call of Sanofi India Limited. My name is Radhika Shah, and I am the Company Secretary of Sanofi India Limited. I have with me Mr. Rajaram Narayanan, Managing Director, and Mr. Vaibhav Karandikar, Whole-Time Director and the Chief Financial Officer of Sanofi India Limited.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Before we begin this investor call, there are two important announcements. First, please note that the proceedings of this meeting, as mentioned before, are being recorded. And second, please also note our standard disclaimer that certain statements in this call may be forward-looking. The actual results may be affected by many factors that may be different from what is being envisaged in terms of future performance and outlook that is being discussed today. Moving on to the agenda of this call, we have divided this call into two parts. In the first part, management will make certain opening remarks regarding the financial performance of the company. And in the second part, management will take questions from investors and participants on the call. The Q&A session will end by 3 p.m. All investors and participants are requested to keep their questions brief and avoid repetition. I now hand over the call to Mr. Narayanan and Mr. Karandikar to give their opening remarks.
Thank you, Radhika, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this call. I am Rajaram Narayanan, and I'm joined by my colleague Vaibhav. I hope that all of you are safe and keeping fine, and even though the situation seems to be getting better on the COVID front, I think we must emphasize that we should not let down guard at all stages. And there seems to be some semblance of normalcy, but I think the infection is still around, and therefore, just like we are emphasizing in the company, we continue to give the message of being very careful. At Sanofi, 2022 has been a challenging but a very fulfilling year, like it has been for many parts of the industry. The first half was quite sort of dominated by the wave of infection. And we as a company continue to focus on what we call the 4S, which is safety, supply, service, and skill building. We had our employees fully vaccinated, and more than 95% of them were fully vaccinated in the third quarter itself. And we're also happy to say that we had no disruptions in supply during 2021. Even though it was a very, very difficult year, and our manufacturing locations as well as our supply chain really delivered excellently. We continue to build new capabilities, particularly in our go-to-market models, emphasizing digital and omni-channel engagement. As far as key events which impacted the business, the first highlight, of course, was that we launched our insulin glargine 300, which is Toujeo, in cartridges, which is the first in the world for Toujeo in a reusable pen format. And we've been seeing excellent momentum for this in line with our diabetes prioritization. We continue to remain very excited about the opportunity to develop and shape the diabetes market in India. At the same time, we also divested our nutraceutical businesses in line with our strategic priorities, and we successfully completed the transaction. I just want to highlight that, we did a national launch of a big portfolio like Toujeo, and we also divested nutraceuticals in these COVID times, and both of them were done entirely digitally, signaling the shape of things to come in the market in the future. Our biggest effort now is, of course, on leveraging our digital and go-to-market models so that we can improve access for our brands, to reach more customers, and raise the quality of our engagement. And we have therefore invested significantly in our CRM systems and analytics, the devices that we have. And at the same time, the entire organization is also being upskilled along with the compulsory digital curriculums and training programs. because we believe that the future is going to be a hybrid one, and we need to create that advantage for the organization in such an environment. On a broader view on the pharma market, I think the last 2 years have seen its ups and downs. There have been some quarters which have been very good, and some quarters have been low, and a lot of it has been driven by whether COVID-specific therapies, found momentum in that quarter and whether specific launches were done. On the same note, even in our business over the last year, there have been some quarters where we have seen an acceleration of certain therapies, and some quarters where we have seen a leveling of that on account of the easing of COVID-19 cases. We believe that 2022 will be far more stable, although the growth will be impacted depending on what the effect of the base year is in terms of which quarter went up or which quarter went down. So on that note, I'm going to hand over the call to our CFO, Vaibhav, to take you through a little bit more of the specifics of 2021. Over to you, Vaibhav.
Thank you, Raja. Good afternoon, everyone again. Just to give a high-level comments on the financial results before we come to the Q&A. So 2021 has been a good year for Sanofi. Optically, of course, you might see that the sales have grown by only 2%, but it should be noted that this 2% growth is after taking into consideration the drop of almost 200 crores plus in export sales due to the slump sale transaction with Zentiva. Essentially, the drop in export sales has been contributed or has been compensated for by the growth in the domestic business of the company. And the growth is at around 12%. It's 13% on a comparable basis, and this contributes to almost 260 crores plus versus the previous year in the domestic business. Your company, as we all know, focuses on certain key therapeutic areas, and we are the trusted partners for healthcare professionals, hospitals, government institutions, patients, and all regulators in the therapeutic areas that we focus on. In terms of the profitability, the profit before exceptional items has increased by 7%, and it stands at 768 crores. And this is despite the pressure on margins due to the significant rise in price of certain APIs, namely paracetamol. As was mentioned by Raja, the sale of the nutraceutical business has resulted in a profit of 489 crores. The profit after tax, the growth of 98% is due to the strong growth in the operating profit, which I commented upon, and also the profit from the sale of the nutraceutical business. The company has declared a total dividend of 490 per share, including a special dividend of 309 per share. And the approximate payout will be in the range of 1,129 crores. In the last year's investor call, I think if all of you recollect, we had highlighted 3 business priorities, and we continue to work on these 3 business priorities. As a reminder, the 3 business priorities are accelerate growth in diabetes, selective and profitable growth in the established products, and build certain key brands in the consumer healthcare portfolio. Before we open the floor for questions, I would like to address a concern raised by some of the investors, especially considering that our key priority remains accelerate growth in diabetes. And the concern raised was on the impact of price control of Lantus, which is likely. Just as a clarification, and we can of course answer more questions on this, but it's important to note that while the price control impact, the impact on the top line is likely to be significant, the impact on the bottom line is likely to be limited because we operate on an arm's length operating model, and therefore the impact is going to be restricted to the margin loss on the sales loss. I hope I'm clear, but as we go along, I'll be happy to answer the questions if this clarification is not sufficient. I leave the floor now to Radhika to take it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Narayanan and Mr. Karandikar, for your comments and remarks. We will now proceed to an interactive Q&A session. In this session, we will respond to your queries within the boundaries of our internal policies. As per our policies, we will restrict our responses to clarify on matters which are already available in public domain through our annual reports, quarterly financial statements, and other disclosures made to stock exchanges. There are many granular aspects of our business or financials, such as product-wise or site-wise or therapy-wise sales, margins, and profitability, which we consider confidential, and hence we will not be able to comment on those topics. Also, we do not provide any earnings guidance, and hence we will not be able to respond to the queries on future business, future product launches, margins, or profitability or capex. You may please raise your queries accordingly. We had mentioned on the registration link, we will be taking questions from you in sequence of your registration. Thank you for registrations that have come in. In case of multiple registrations from the same participant, we will take the questions from the first registered participant and give others the opportunity at the end of the session. In the interest of time and for giving equal opportunity to all other participants, please keep the number of questions limited to 1 or 2. I now hand over the conference to the Chorus Call team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. A reminder to the participants, anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. The first question is from the line of Vipul Shah from Ripple Wave Equity. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Just wanted to understand in terms of the quarter gone by. So there are two questions. A, is the NLEM price impact already in this quarter for Lantus? That was question one. And second, we've seen the other expenses to sales at a pretty elevated level in this quarter. Historically, they've been, in the range of 13 to 15%, whereas this quarter, the other expenses to sales were around 21%. So is there any one-off in this, and should we, what should the normal, other expenses to the sales number be, going ahead? That is question number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Vipul. So I'll answer the first one. The NLEM, list, first of all, has not been formally released. Yeah. So even as regard to Lantus, there are reports which have come, and I think Vaibhav was only asking for, I was replying to certain clarifications with it, which have come. But to be very clear over here, there is no list which is being released by the government formally on the National List of Essential Medicines. This is generally expected sometime, in the first half of this year, and we are all awaiting. There is a likelihood, at least as per the reports in the newspapers, that Lantus could be included, and it's in that context that we have, given some clarification. But the first quarter results do not have any component of any new NLEM which is there. Okay, and Vaibhav, the second one, maybe you can answer these things.
Yeah. So to add to what Raja said, as Raja mentioned, the clarification on Lantus is more in response to some of the queries raised, especially considering the diabetes is an important area for us to focus on. Coming back to your question on the expenses and the Q4 2021 expenses as a percentage to sales, the other expenses being higher. So there are a couple of reasons for it. One reason is, of course, in Q4 2021, we were back in terms of back to the field in terms of physical operations. And while that is one reason, there were also some, product cycle meetings, etc., more from operational strategy implementation for 2022, etc. But it's largely driven by the fact that it was back to work. There is an element of CSR spend, the mandatory CSR spend, which came more in Q4 of 2021 in terms of phasing, which also is contributing. And another reason for the higher impact, as you can see, is also because of the sales being lower in this quarter compared to the immediately preceding quarter. So the expenses in absolute terms being higher and the sales being lower, overall optically the percentage looks high. It's not expected that the same level of percentage will be, as a percentage to sales, we'll be seeing going forward. So there'll be an overall normalization. But as we commence the physical activities again, there is likely to be some amount of increase over the overall average in other expenses to sales ratio. If you look at Jan-December 2021, the average comes to roughly 16%. So one can expect a slight increase over this percentage, though clearly not the same percentage that you see in Q4 of 2021.
So related to that, as you mentioned that, if you see Q on Q, the sales drop is there to the extent of almost 8%. So is there some seasonality built in it, or is this also the impact of the nutraceutical sort of top line going out from September?
Yeah, so like you pointed out, there is clearly the impact of the nutraceutical business, which is there in Q4. And there is also it's not a seasonality part, but in Q2 and Q3, certain products we had higher sales because of the COVID impact. Products like Clexane and insulins, we saw higher traction. So I would not contribute it to seasonality, but for sure, peculiarly in Q2 and Q3, we had higher sales on this account. And both the factors, therefore, you see that there is a degrowth in the domestic segment because of these two reasons.
And lastly, probably a request to the management that, if this interaction could be at a more frequent level, it would really help the shareholders. And also, if the company, can give some investor deck, if you see the parent, it's a fantastic investor deck which the parent lays out. So something of that could be adopted here, given the fact that you have a 40% minority shareholder, and we're really glued on to the company, what it does, and any sort of color, as Sanofi gives out in France, similar lines, it could be really helpful. That's a request. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Vipul. We've noted your request. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Suchi Narola, an individual investor. Please go ahead. Suchi Narola, your line is in talk mode. Please go ahead with your question. As there is no response from the current participant, we move to the next question from the line of Cinderella Thomas Carvalho from Centrum Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. If you can help me understand the diabetes portfolio volume growth on an annual basis, and in case of any threat in terms of NLEM come through, would it be on the smallest unit of 3 ml vial, and would Toujeo be part of it or excluded? Clarifications on these fronts.
So firstly thank you for the question. Firstly, on the second piece of it, really we cannot speculate at all on what will come in the NLEM. This, in our view, we should just leave it to whatever the judgment of the government is going to be on that. And in any case, I think we have a very comprehensive portfolio, and there is a huge opportunity to grow the insulin business, in India. As I said before, the penetration levels of insulin in India are just 16%, and that's significantly lower than most other countries. And with a comprehensive portfolio like ours, we really look at market development, and that should be something that gives us a big headroom for the future. But there is nothing that we can comment on which product, etc., because there is no list published. On the first part of it, in terms of the
Volume growth of insulin.
the overall volume growth in insulin is at about a little over 5% in terms of the total volume. It's of course much higher now, driven because of the launch of Toujeo, and we expect that the momentum in Toujeo will continue. Thank you.
And just to clarify from our strategy perspective, any other established and the consumer brands which you were highlighting, any success that we have gained over this last 1 year in this transition of nutraceutical going out and export focus lowering down. So if you could highlight any success that we have had in terms of strategy to focus on these two segments, and if you can help us with some more granularities around it.
Very clearly, I think the emphasis on allergy continues from our side, and Allegra continues to remain an important. It's a brand which is growing for us. We've also an innovation pipeline on it. We have recently launched the nasal duo spray. On Allegra, we have started expanding our reach in Allegra through new programs, both in field as well as through digital engagement. And that brand is building very fast. We've seen a strong revival also happening in Combiflam tablets, and we are seeing acceleration as the markets have opened up again. So the innovation pipeline continues for key brands of ours, which are market leaders. And as I don't think it's one to compensate the other, because the nutraceuticals divestment was purely strategic. It didn't fit into our priorities. But the other brands like Allegra and Combiflam are high priority for us. Yeah.
Thank you so
our
much.
ambition in general, like we've always said, that in these key brands that we have, we want to grow faster than the market.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Suchi Narula, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Yeah. So thanks for taking my questions. The first question is, can you give the contribution of COVID-related sales in CY21?
So, look, what's your second question?
Yeah,
Take it together instead of going one at a time, yeah.
Okay, so contribution of COVID, what's the current contribution of products under NLEM is the other one, and I also wanted to understand, the impact that going digital in a big way can have on your PCPM, OPEX and CAPEX, and also the contribution of soframycin, which will go up.
So we'll take one at a time. The first one, we don't have any COVID contributing therapies per se, like medicines which are specifically dedicated to COVID, like what have been launched in the recent times. We don't do that. There are a couple of therapies which tend to accelerate due to things like hospitalization, for example. As the hospitalization cases increase, the need for enoxaparin, which is our brand Flexin, increased because of large number of cases which were hospitalized. And then, of course, as the cases came down, the requirement came down. But it's not a COVID-specific therapy. It continues to sell throughout the year and just gets a bit of a spike when hospitalizations increase.
I understand that. Sorry, if I may just sort of ask for a clarification there. You probably have an understanding of the trendline sales of ClickSyn, and obviously, you can therefore impute out, at least on a ballpark basis, what's been the impact.
Basis, we could say we'd have had about between 12 and 15% kind of an increase on an annualized basis on ClickSyn. Yeah, against typically what would have been a regular year. Of course, the spike would have been much higher in the few months when COVID was high. Yeah? Yes. And that's the only real therapy which we've got. The others are pretty much, stable kind of businesses.
The second question I think you had about the
NLEM contribution is about 18%. 18% of our portfolio comes under NLEM at this point of time. And that's the second question you had.
And I couldn't understand the comments Vaibhav made on impact of NLEM on Lantus. If you could just clarify what you mean by the impact of on top line not sort of coming down to the EBITDA line, or is it going to come to the EBITDA line in a commensurate way to the top line?
I think on this, it is just speculation right now on whether Lantus will come under price control or not. It is just that there are a couple of articles which came out, including insulin glargine, and consequently some of these shareholders have asked, and I think basically that has been clarified. It will obviously, if it comes under price control, there will be a hit in the top line. It will come down proportionately.
The top line will come down, but it will not. The entire value will not flow to the EBITDA. I think that's the question, and that's the clarification which I made. Yeah. Since we operate on a arm's length methodology here, the entire drop in sales value will not flow to EBITDA. That's the point which I was trying to clarify. Again, as Raja pointed out, this is more to clarify some of the concerns of the shareholders. We have received some questions in writing, so we wanted to preempt that by answering the question upfront. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes. Thanks.
Okay, then the other last question you had, I think that's it, right?
No, I had one more question, and that is related to the impact on PCPM that your digital efforts could have, and also, what could be the OPEX or CAPEX related to, investing in CRM and expanding your digital footprint.
Okay, so sorry, just give me I can say, you want to know OPEX and CAPEX. So there is no real impact on our CAPEX on account of this in terms of the digital footprint. As far as OPEX is concerned, we are seeing, of course, some reduction because the face-to-face interactions have come down.
Yeah, and like Raja said, there will be some reduction in OPEX, but we are also looking at increasing the reach based on using the digital medium. So depending on the total, points that we have today, using digital means will also help us to enhance the reach. And OPEX, of course, there will be some reduction, but I think for us, the way we look at it is increasing the reach is more important using these new channels.
Right. And did Supervision Impact Q4?
No impact of Supervision on Q4. The transaction was closed in January of 2022.
Right. Thanks. I'll get back in the queue.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, a reminder to the participants, anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 at this time. The next question is from the line of Himanshu Upadhyay from O3 Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. My one question was on the insulin part only. So, what we have been saying, does it mean that we get only marketing and distribution margin as a percentage of revenue, and hence we expect lesser impact in margins? That is what you are trying to say?
No, we get traded margins on the portfolio, but these traded margins are capped at an arm's length basis. And therefore, in case we are less than arm's length, we expect the compensation to come from the group. And therefore, as I said, the flow through will not be to EBITDA completely, although the overall value may deplete.
Okay. Thanks for the detailed reply. And one thing, what is the size of the domestic business X of divestments what we have done in 2021? And what was the growth in the remaining business, which has not been divested?
So if you look at the question is more for the retained business which has not been divested, the overall increase is roughly in the range of 13%.
So this 13% is X of non-divested business. And the size of that non-divested business is?
It's close to 2,240 crores.
Okay. And one more thing.
Yeah.
We have not brought many new product introductions in oral dosages in diabetes and cardiovascular, okay? What will be the impact on us and what is the strategy for us? Means, especially when diabetes is a core therapy for us. So how do you play the market where many more oral dosages or many more products are in the oral dosages and we are having reduced market